Okay, so it took me a lot longer than I thought it would to get this review out, but I saw it one more time. So now I've seen The Rise of Skywalker 3 times, and I'm ready to talk about it. So let's talk about it. Okay. Where do I begin with this? There is a lot to unpack. Okay, here we go. So, not unlike how Avengers Endgame was the finale of the Infinity Saga, The Rise of Skywalker is the culmination of 42 years of the Skywalker Saga, as well as the canon stories of shows like the Clone Wars and Rebels. Of course, we all know Star Wars will continue through new movies and TV shows, but according to Disney and Lucasfilm, The Rise of Skywalker will conclude the Skywalker Saga. I'll be very honest with you guys. This movie's release has stressed me out as a fan. Not long before, I felt myself slipping into cynicism towards this trilogy. I loved a lot of the films released under Disney, but each one has felt significantly flawed and rushed. But it wasn't just the problems I had with the last two films. It was also what I was going to expect with this one, considering how long it was going to be, and in my mind, how much could they resolve in one movie like this? See, I really love Star Wars, and I do not want this saga to end. For one thing, because I'm not ready to just say goodbye to the story. I'm just not ready. The other reason is simply because this trilogy just hasn't been developed enough. There's not been enough character building or world building to satisfy me. By the time you get to the end of The Last Jedi, it seems like the war is just starting. I mean, Luke even says that himself. If it were my choice, I would have spaced out these movies by about 3 years and made sure that there was a solid plan and even allowed the possibility for a fourth and final film. I mean, if we're saying that this is going to be the end of the Skywalker Saga, Star Wars is one of the biggest franchises in history, it deserves a proper send-off. If you rush the ending for this saga, as they did, it just feels very questionable. I question the leadership at Lucasfilm for doing this. It's just a wasted opportunity. Nobody said they had to get this film out as quickly as they did. And if somebody at corporate, like Bob Iger, forced them to do this, then I will never understand that, because it's a missed opportunity. They could have made more money and delivered better quality films if they had just taken their time. So, but yeah, once again, I have no control over this. So, yeah, there you go. I had to see the movie 3 times before I was really ready to give my full opinion on it, because there's so many things I really like about this movie, and there's so many things I don't like, and I really have tried to have an open mind going into it. The bottom line is that I really like the movie. I actually really love it in a lot of ways. I would be lying if I said I didn't have issues with it, because I do have issues with it. It's not a perfect movie, and a lot of the concerns that I had leading up to it were justified. And I am going to go right into spoilers, and if you don't know that this is a spoiler review, then this is another warning for you. This is a spoiler warning. Hopefully you've seen it by now, but I imagine there's still some of you that maybe haven't had the chance. So, spoiler warning, here we go.
Put me down! You know, looking back, it all makes sense.
Oh, don't worry, Palpatine. You're going to be just fine, my friend. It's kind of one of those weird things, because on the one hand, it does make a little sense to have the Emperor in the movie, and then on the other hand, it's like, wait a minute, they didn't do anything to allude to this in the last 2 movies, so this definitely does not feel like it was the original plan. I don't really care whether or not it was the original plan. I'm just saying it seems kind of strange, because I don't think anyone believed that Kylo Ren was actually going to be the main villain, and I don't think anybody was really invested in Snoke either, so I guess it makes sense for him to come back, although I still think there's better villain choices they could have picked for the finale, like maybe Darth Plagueis or someone, but regardless, he's here. Maybe it'll be explained at some point.
I have a lot of questions. Number 1, how dare you?
Basically, Abrams just wants you to kind of accept it, and part of me does, and then part of me doesn't, because it's not just about accepting it in the movie. It's also about what came before, and I have to wonder, does Palpatine returning to the franchise like this, does that undermine Anakin's sacrifice in Return of the Jedi? Because him killing the Emperor was a big deal, and it was so much about him fulfilling the prophecy as the chosen one. So I still don't understand what you do with that, because even in the movie, Anakin, is talking to Rey through the Force, and he says, "Rey, bring back the balance as I did." And I was thinking to myself, okay, you brought back the balance, but what does that even mean? And you only did it for 30 years. Like, it was 6 movies building up to this big moment, only to have the Emperor come back. And not only does he come back, but he comes back with a fleet that is way more powerful than his first one. He's basically got a fleet full of Death Stars. I mean, as if one wasn't enough, now he's got thousands of them. It's just kind of hard for me to watch this movie and then think about Return of the Jedi in the ending and wonder if the Return of the Jedi ending has no meaning anymore, because the war didn't really end and the Empire wasn't really that whipped. And Palpatine, I mean, the movie says that he died. He's definitely died. But how he came back and came back stronger than ever and came back with a force that is way more powerful than anything he ever had leading the Empire before is just hard for me to reconcile. The only thing is, I really like Palpatine in the movie. I think he does a really good job, and I think his character is awesome as always. But he's really not given enough screen time, for one thing, and the final battle with him and Rey and Ben Solo is just not long enough. And I'll get to that more later. But I think if his role had been increased in this film, or maybe alluded to in the last couple films, or maybe they just explained a little bit more, it probably would have been more satisfying. But I want to talk about one of the key stars of this film, and that is Kylo Ren, a.k.a. Ben Solo, played by Adam Driver. Now, I'm just going to say right now, Adam Driver has become one of my favorite actors in the past few years. Everything he is in, I just absolutely, even if I don't love the movie, I love him in it because he's just so good. He carries such confidence on screen, and he has such range from just amazing emotional depth, and he has amazing comedic timing too. So what he brings to this film is one of the things that keeps it from being mediocre. And his arc from The Force Awakens to this movie is so awesome to see, because at first you think that maybe he's not as powerful as it's implied. But then by the time we get to the Rise of Skywalker, holy cow, this is Kylo Ren unhinged, and he gets to just go all out, and it is so awesome to see him in his full power. But that's not the best thing about the movie. The best thing is whenever he finally gets to this moment of redemption between him and his father. And that's during one of the best scenes in the movie, which is the fight between Kylo Ren and Rey on the Death Star wreckage. Everything that happens in that scene is just absolute gold. I love John Williams and his score for this movie. I thought that the first 2 films in this new trilogy were a little lacking and they didn't have a lot of energy to them. And I don't know if that's reflective of the movies. Maybe John Williams didn't feel inspired as much as he has before. I don't know. But this movie utilizes not only the scores that he's already written, like Rey's theme, Kylo Ren's theme, really utilizes them very well and some new reimaginings, but it also brings back some old themes. I noticed Yoda's theme, I noticed the Emperor's theme, Leia's theme. I mean, there's so many themes here that are brought back into the fold, and it feels appropriate. I mean, the music has got a lot of energy this time, and it just works really well. I'm so glad that's an improvement this time around. Props to John Williams for pulling out all the stops. I don't know how old he is. I know he's in his 80s, so it's awesome that he was able to do this, and kudos to him for that. So there you go. I really loved the kind of fetch quest that the film sends our heroes on the first hour, although the whole Sith dagger thing made very little sense to me. But their entire journey is just like intermittently mixed with these encounters with Kylo Ren in the First Order, and it all makes it just really engaging. Kylo and Rey still have this Force link that happened in The Last Jedi, and they have all these conversations. Kylo keeps pressing Rey to come to the dark side and reveals her true parentage to her. And they have multiple fights, including this one epic Force power showdown on Pisana that ends with this fake out of Chewie dying. And then, of course, Rey pulls that amazing maneuver that disables Kylo's TIE fighter, makes him crash, and then they have this showdown. Everything on Pisana is really exciting and fast-paced and engaging. I think in this film, what's more interesting is really just the characters, not necessarily the story. I really, they could really be doing anything on any planet as long as it's as fast-paced as this, and I would probably still find it engaging because the characters make it that way. The action makes it that way. And so you can stop and critique things, but really at the end of the day, it's just good entertainment. This is really the kind of Star Wars that I've wanted for a long time. It's the kind of things that we all look forward to in a Star Wars movie. It's exciting, it's got great funny characters, it's engaging, and it's perfect. It's just what we need. It's too bad that when they introduce new characters like Zori Bliss, they're given such little time on screen, and I get why, because there's so much they have to accomplish in this film, and really, at the end of the day, this movie is great because of its characters, and I think that's what will keep me watching it and keep me enjoying it. Even my problems with the plot aside, I think I can enjoy it because of these characters that have made it so engaging and interesting.
Is that yours?
No, for the 100th time. That's that same stupid black bag. Mine doesn't have a stripe. It's like that stripy bag is mocking me.
Even with all these great laughs and this awesome adventure that our heroes go on, if we didn't have the Kylo Ren and Rey moments where they're facing off and inevitably they find common ground, I don't think this movie would have been nearly as good, because to me, they are the best parts of this movie. They're dynamic. And I'm not just saying this because, yes, I do like Reylo. I am a Reylo supporter. I'm not like hardcore supporter, but I loved their interactions because they both challenge each other. They both come from similar backgrounds. They're both tempted by the dark side. They're both pulled towards the light. And it's interesting, the movie makes them this Force dyad concept, which I've never heard before in Star Wars, but I guess it's a thing. And I love that it just continues to build on their relationship. And they fight, and they fight, and they fight. And eventually it reaches this climactic duel on the Death Star ruins on, I think, Endor. And that fight, let me just tell you guys, I haven't really been impressed with many of the fights in this trilogy so far, except for that throne room scene in The Last Jedi, and obviously they weren't really fighting each other. But that fight on Endor, on the Death Star, is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, it is so awesome to see them go all out with force powers and lightsabers and flips and jumps. And eventually, Kylo Ren gets the upper hand, which I couldn't believe. I did not think that was going to happen. I mean, I knew he was powerful, but after seeing him lose to her in The Force Awakens, I was like, no, there's no way he's going to win this fight. And that's, to me, when you reach probably the most powerful moment in the movie, to me, is this moment when Leia reaches out with the Force, with her dying breath, I guess, and reaches out to her son, and it causes Ben to stop for a second, right as he's about to kill Rey, because he's beaten her back enough and she's vulnerable. And he pauses and he looks back and he senses his mother's voice, and Rey takes that opportunity to grab his lightsaber as he drops it and stabs him right through the abdomen. And at first I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, he's dead. And I thought about it because I was like, wait a minute, I don't think he's in any of the material I've seen for the last part of the movie, so maybe he is dead. But no, Rey heals him with the Force, and it is freaking awesome. And she tells him that she would have taken his hand as Ben Solo, not as Kylo Ren. And then she takes his TIE fighter and runs off. And Kylo Ren is left there with his shame, and everything that he's done is all just, it's all come full circle. And it's like he's finally, even though he was saved by Rey, he has met his own demise as Kylo Ren, and he realizes he can't be this man any longer. He realizes that no matter what he does, if he pursues the darkness, he will never be satisfied, and he will only find pain, because that's what has led him to this moment where he almost died had Rey not intervened. And see, this is why I have felt for a long time now that Ben Solo's story in this trilogy has been better developed than Rey, because he is forced to make decisions that lead him one path or the other. We never really see Rey struggle with the dark side. And the idea of her being a nobody, basically, she has no important family lineage. The fact that they changed that for this film, I think, kind of makes her story less compelling, unfortunately. I don't think she's less interesting on screen. I still think she's really good in this movie. But she would have been more interesting had they left it as it was. And so, for me, Kylo Ren has the more interesting arc in this whole trilogy. And in fact, not only that, but also I would say the same, because for me, redemption is a really fascinating concept. And I'm just going to say, for me as a Christian, redemption is something that we talk about constantly. And because we believe that we as Christians have been redeemed from our old ways, from darkness, from sin. And so it's such a really cool visual allegory of this old dead spiritual self dying and being brought to life as a new person. And I love the imagery of that. And even if that's not what they were going for, which I doubt they were, I can't help but make that connection in my mind. And I always think that redemption is a fascinating concept because I can relate to it so much. And I think all believers can say the same thing. And I don't mean to go off on a tangent here about that. I think that Ben Solo's arc was so well-rounded. And I really wish that he had been given more screen time in this film, especially after he's been redeemed, because I think he could have added a lot more to the final act, especially. But when he's on screen as Ben Solo, it is so powerful and it is so captivating. I honestly feel kind of cheated that we didn't get more Ben Solo on screen. And it makes me think that they did change some things last second, because he has no presence after his death. There's no Force ghost. They don't talk about him. I really think that something was reshot. I don't really know what else to think about that. I don't know why they would not give him a happy ending.
As you can see, my young apprentice, your friends have failed. Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational statue. Oh, come on!
So let's talk about the final battle with Palpatine. So this is where I feel like the film actually starts to get kind of weak. I think the third act is overall kind of disappointing. And for one thing, because I don't really understand. So Palpatine's goal was to get Rey to kill him so he would like transfer his spirit to hers and then he would rule like through her or something and they all be one. But she ends up killing him anyways. And that doesn't happen. So I'm really confused by that, because I'm like, isn't that what he wanted? But somehow when she gets all the other Jedi to like stand behind her and give her extra power, the end result is not what he wanted. I mean, he dies, yes, but isn't that what he wanted? I'm very, very confused by this. And even his plan with all of these ships that all have Death Star tech on them, I mean, the fact that they were so vulnerable before getting to the atmosphere, I don't understand. They didn't have shields. And the idea that Palpatine didn't have the foresight to recognize how vulnerable his plan was, it just seems like it was so rushed. And when all of these other ships show up to help the Resistance fight back, and they start getting the upper hand and taking out all these Star Destroyers, it happens so quickly. I mean, there has to be thousands of these Star Destroyers, and they have weapons. They have their own anti-aircraft weapons. They have their own TIE fighters. And yes, they're probably facing one of the biggest fleets I've ever seen in Star Wars. But at the same time, they're taken out like it's nothing. As soon as they destroy that navigational ship, it's just like a turkey shoot. It's like nothing. There's nothing really to hold them back anymore, and their victory is achieved within like a matter of seconds. I mean, we don't really know how long they were fighting there, but the scene just goes by so quickly. I wanted to see more dogfights. I wanted to see more ships going toe to toe. There were a couple of big ships on the Resistance side. It would have been cool to see something more like akin to the Revenge of the Sith, where you saw a lot of these big ships going at it with each other. I really feel like they should have extended that sequence a lot more. It just felt very underwhelming. I mean, it looks great and it's cool and it is pretty exciting whenever they come in, but I can't help but feel like it just should have been bigger, like longer. Not just visually big, but just longer. Like, let's take our time and really soak in what's happening. You know, that's one of the things I loved about like Avengers Endgame is that final battle is pretty lengthy. I mean, it could have been longer too, but it's fairly lengthy. You get to see all kinds of guys going at it. But everything in the third act just feels way too rushed, and including this final showdown with the Emperor, because it just ended so quickly. She basically just forced lightning back into his face and killed him in a scene that looks something like it should be in an Indiana Jones movie. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't cool. I'm not saying it didn't look cool and it wasn't a powerful moment, but it just seemed like the Emperor is not as smart as we make him out to be, as he's portrayed in the films, because he keeps getting beaten very easily. And in this film, I don't understand why the final duel couldn't have been a lot more bombastic and creative, and we couldn't have seen like some lightsaber fighting in there or something. I mean, it just seemed so conservative. And that was one of my concerns going into this film, was that it looks really good, and it's not that it's not an exciting scene, and it does have some momentum and some power behind it. And I really liked Rey reaching out with the Force to the other Jedi. I thought that was pretty cool. It had some cool lines in it. And it introduces some interesting ideas about like these Sith loyalists and all that. But there's so much that's not explained, and you're just basically forced to just accept everything that you're seeing. And if you're a casual moviegoer, I guess it's fine. But if you're even an average Star Wars fan, I think you would probably have some questions too. And I think if this is really going to be the finale of the Skywalker Saga, I would have really have liked to have seen a final battle that was way more elaborate and way more satisfying, because I just felt like it was just too conservative and didn't amount to anything as big as I was expecting it would be. And of course, it follows with the scene of Ben Solo coming out, from the depths. You get cast aside for the final battle. That was kind of sad, but he saves Rey's life, and then they have this Reylo moment. They kiss, and she calls him Ben, and I really loved it. I thought it was pretty awesome. I mean, I think it was something that's been a long time coming, and we can debate about Reylo all day, but ultimately I think that was really satisfying. I don't understand why he just died instantly like that. I think, to me, it might be more evident that the film was rushed and reshoots happened, but I don't really know what to make of that. So for me, I really loved this movie, even with its many flaws. I think it's going to be one of those things that I will always have a hard time handling the ending, especially since it seems like they didn't really take their time to conclude the story as well as they could have, and they kind of left a lot of things untouched. But even that said, I still did love the movie overall, and I can accept most of that. I feel like the more I watch this movie, the more I like it, and then at the same time, I get a little more frustrated every time, because I think about characters like Ben Solo, who I feel like should have had a bigger role and a happier ending, and a lot of things were left unexplained. One thing I really still do not understand is, who is the Skywalker that is rising? Is it supposed to be Rey because she changes her identity to be a Skywalker now? Because honestly, that ending scene when she tells that person that she's Rey Skywalker, I still can't quite buy it. It doesn't feel right somehow. I think it doesn't feel right that she's a Palpatine either, but that she's taking on the name Skywalker, I don't think it was earned. I don't think the story paid off enough for me to really buy into that. So I still question the titling and the choice in that, honestly. It's just a little frustrating, because I feel like Rey is such a great character and could be even better if they had just written her a little bit more and expanded on her character, not gone with this Palpatine story that's even more confusing now, because now that she's actually a Skywalker. But I'll probably make a whole other video about that sometime. And I know a lot of Star Wars, the fun of it is that it's open to interpretation. And since Disney's not stopping the series anytime soon, we know there's still a future for a lot of these characters if they want to pursue that. And for me, the ending of this film doesn't ruin it, even my issues with it. I think overall I'm still sold on it. And as a whole saga, I think it still works pretty well. But again, I just wish they had just taken their time with it and really perfected a polished, finished, lengthy film. Because if it's, look, guys, it's Star Wars. It's probably one of the biggest franchises in history. And I think just this year we saw an example of how you can give a satisfying conclusion to a series and not be held back by time constraints or pressures from above. I don't know if maybe somebody at Disney was pressuring them to get this movie done by Christmas. If that was the case, then shame on them, because they cheated us and everyone else out of a much more satisfying ending. But I know I sound really conflicted on this, but I really did love this movie. I just have a few problems with it, especially in the third act. And I would love to hear what you guys think. If you had the same issues, or if you have any ideas about what you think the Rise of Skywalker means in terms of Rey's character, and, you know, let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, if you really like this channel and you like what you've seen, please consider hitting like on the video and subscribing to the channel, and I'll be delivering a lot more content soon. I'm trying to figure out how to do the best at video editing and the quality to be as good as it can. So forgive me as I fumble my way through this, but I am having a lot of fun. I think it's fun to just talk about stuff we love, so hopefully you feel the same way. Okay, that's all I got for you. The Rise of Skywalker is out. Go check it out. See what you think. Come back and let me know, and we'll talk about it. Have a great day. See you guys later.